Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, 2 months since the Grenfell fire, safety at other high-rise buildings continues to give cause for concern. More than 200 flats in 4 blocks in southeast London have had gas supplies cut off and hundreds of residents are to be rehoused. An investigation into cracks in the buildings on the Ledbury estate found the blocks are at risk of collapse in the event of a gas explosion. Those living there say their safety concerns have been ignored for years. Kamian Zeram reports.
The warnings that went unheeded, the tower block that changed everything. As Grenfell is slowly covered with sheeting, gas engineers cut off supplies to another high-rise estate on the other side of London. A gas leak here, it was discovered yesterday, could be catastrophic. But why has it taken this long to find out?
Residents say they've been complaining for years, and in some cases over a decade, that these towers aren't safe. And it wasn't until the fire at Grenfell that the local council finally began to take them seriously.
It's because of Grenfell people are being heard, but these problems have always been there. And I really don't think this problem isn't just going to be in the Ledbury estate.
Shortly after Grenfell, Hanan and his neighbours held an emergency meeting to discuss cracks in their walls so big you could shake hands through them. Standard high-rise fire advice: stay in your flat, the blaze can't spread, clearly won't work. Southwark Council ordered a full safety review and discovered another potentially disastrous problem, that the Ledbury estate was at risk of collapse. Ronan Point, built around the same time. In the late 60s, a small gas explosion tore through 22 stories. 4 died. The Ledbury towers were meant to have been strengthened, but it never happened. Last night, the council told residents their gas was being turned off and they'll soon have to move out.
I've got to boil water on the cooker to bath a 6-month-old. It's diabolical. Well, the cracks have been here 30-odd years. I mean, I've been here 7 years and I've alerted them more than once. So, you know, they could have dealt with it a lot sooner and we wouldn't be in this situation now.
The legacy of Grenfell. Unresolved questions around the safety of cladding systems, emergency evacuations in other boroughs like Camden, and widespread concerns among residents that politicians don't listen until they're forced to.
When we wanted to hold a community meeting, which we're allowed to do, we're residents here, we were told that we were agitators. I've been called a conspiracy theorist. If they have tried to make us look as though we were some sort of wackos.
And when you say they, who do you mean?
I mean the council.
But we are now in a post-Grenfell world.
Grenfell has changed everything, it has, and so it should as well. I mean, we've taken the decision, we have 174 tower blocks in Southwark, and we've taken a decision to do a Type 4, which is the most intensive fire risk assessment on all our blocks. We do fire risk assessments annually anyway.
How many of those 174 are you worried about?
At the moment, we have no other buildings of stone structures here on the Ledbury, and we're working our way through, and we should have finished those by September.
But one estimate for refurbishments in Southwark alone, up to £100 million. The local MP says central government must help out.
Today, I'm absolutely challenging the government. Say you are going to give the money to the council to make sure that they are doing their job as the government. The council's doing their job, the government have got to step up.
Sajid Javid has already said if local councils have difficulties trying to sort out refurb, to talk to DCLG. So the commitment is there, surely.
Well, it's actually mealy-mouthed words. If you hear what he said to me and the other MPs in the House of Commons, he's talked about help. He hasn't actually said we are going to come up with the cash.
The Department for Local Government responded with this statement. We're liaising with the council on this issue, they say, and stand ready if they need any further government support. But tonight, the residents of 224 flats in these Southwark tower blocks ponder their future and past. Where will they go? And why have they been living in dangerous housing for so long?
The judge leading the public inquiry into the Grenfell fire has written to the Prime Minister outlining his recommendations of what it should look at. The terms of reference are in part based on 550 submissions made by the public. Number 10 say the Prime Minister will respond shortly. It comes as the Charity Commission has revealed that only a fraction of the £20 million raised by the public after the fire has been distributed to the survivors.
So at the moment we have no concerns with the charities, but I think charities accept that communication could have been swifter, and that we now need to ensure there's engagement with the survivors and those affected so they have a say in how those funds are spent and how best it reaches them.
Well, I'm joined now by Peter Herbert of BME Lawyers for Grenfell, who have written to the Charity Commission on behalf of Grenfell residents and survivors to express their concern about the delivery of funds. Peter Herbert, are you surprised in your heart of hearts about how little has been distributed, or did you always think that it would take some time to distribute this enormous amount of money in this incredibly complex situation?
Well, it shouldn't. I mean, the direct answer is survivors and residents have, for weeks now, said they had complaints about where this money was going, how it was going, and who was making these decisions. And it looks like the great and the good have been extremely patronising of this very intelligent, very articulate community and decided themselves the rate of distribution of these funds, particular criteria, which has its resonance with person injury law and which bears no relationship at all to the loss that has been suffered.
Well, give us an example, if you can, of the great and the good making those decisions. What exactly are you referring to there?
I mean, without singling out particular organisations, but I mean the Red Cross, the London Emergencies Trust and others, in a sense, have not had a specific plan. They have not consulted local people. They do not represent those diverse communities. And what we've said from the outset is there must be a specific Grenfell Trust that has, in a sense, a one-stop shop for all of these applications and distribution of funds.
Well, I mean, those organisations you mentioned say that, you know, they've got to be careful with checking that claims are bona fide. There's a complexity about, you know, some survivors are still in hospital, and, you know, they counter that argument with...
Well, it's not... Who gave them that power? Nobody. The community certainly didn't. And therefore, if this was the wealthy residents of the other part of this borough, they would not be treated in this way. And therefore, we strongly think there are issues of race and class here, which the great and the good think they themselves are the source of all knowledge and distribution of these vast funds. And therefore, for only less than £2 million to be distributed is an utter disgrace.
But all of those charities insist that every penny will be paid out. Do you trust that that eventually will be the case?
No. I mean, these charities have huge overheads. Charities is big business. You know, you have chief executives who are paid well over £100,000, and therefore a lot of this money will go, we think, without checks and balances being conducted, into the bureaucracy of these charities.
Well, you don't have the evidence that money is going to be misspent, do you? I mean, we've asked the charities to come on the programme so they could discuss this direct with you, but, I mean, there's no evidence for that. That's a suspicion, isn't it?
We know. We have done research and we have done missions to see refugees in Lebanon and Sicily, and we know very well that international charities do have a huge bureaucracy where only a relatively small percentage gets through to the victims on the ground. We do not want that replicated here.
So just very briefly, I mean, there is a huge amount of money that is to be distributed. How would you like to see that shared out? The wider community or directly?
We would like the Charities Commission, which has an unusual role in this, to appoint with consultation with the community, a specific trust for Grenfell, which represents the diversity of that community, and they have criteria for distributing that money that derives from the community itself and not from the great and good.
Peter Herbert, thank you very much for joining us.